family she holds, and service done, bowed down to the late goddess, simply carved by Satyavan upon a forest stone. What prayer she breathed, her soul and Durga knows. Perhaps she felt in the dim forest shoe the infinite mother watching over her child. Perhaps the shrouded voice spoke something word.
Good morning. So we've come to Book 8, the Book of Death, and we're at page 561. So as it says in the footnote at the bottom of the page there, that this canto comes from an early version of Savitri in which there were only 6 cantos and the epilogue. And this was Canto 3 in that version. And so they've just kept that designation, Canto 3, kind of as a reminder of that, because it was never fully revised and integrated into the latter part of the poem. But I feel, and have always kind of felt, that it is just right for this final version anyway. It just kind of provides a significant episode in the story of Savitri. It doesn't go deep into the nature of death or anything, but it just recounts the death of Satyavan in the storyline. And it does it in a very beautiful way, actually. So just recapping a little bit from previously, Savitri had received a summons from the summit of her being to turn within, to find her soul, and to conquer death. And she has done this in the previous book, the Book of Yoga. And in the last couple of cantos of that book, we saw Savitri attaining to nirvana, this high state of consciousness and being where all kind of disappeared into a void or emptiness. Whatever perceptions remained of the world seemed unreal, as if kind of a moving picture before her eyes, but nothing had any substance or sense of reality to her. And then in the last canto, the cosmic spirit and the cosmic consciousness, that experience shifted, changed. And she began to experience the world around not as an unreal moving picture, but as the very body of God, of this underlying reality which she was experiencing as a kind of a void or emptiness. She experienced that spirit no longer as a void, but as the one being, the divine God, and the world around as his manifestation, as his form and substance. And I'll just read a passage from that on page 556, about a third of the way down. There's a new paragraph, and I'll just read the first part of that paragraph, giving us a sense of where Savitri's realization has come as she now encounters death in this next canto. It says, her spirit saw the world as living God. It saw the One and knew that all was He. She knew Him as the absolute self-space, one with herself and ground of all things here, in which the world wanders seeking for the truth, guarded behind the face of ignorance. She followed Him through the march of endless time. All nature's happenings were events in her. The heartbeats of the cosmos were her own. All beings thought and felt and moved in her. She inhabited the vastness of the world. Its distances were her nature's boundaries. Its closenesses, her own life's intimacies. Her mind became familiar with its mind. Its body was her body's larger frame, in which she lived and knew herself in it. One, multitudinous in its multitudes. She was a single being, yet all things. The world was her spirit's wide circumference. The thoughts of others were her intimates, their feelings close to her universal heart, their bodies, her many bodies, kin to her. She was no more herself, but all the world. So now let's turn to the book of death. We've read through it once, but now we'll go through it and passage by passage and pause a little bit between each passage. So, can we start with, are you ready? Maybe we'll start on this side. Start here. Roberto.
Now it was here in this great golden dawn. By her still sleeping husband lane she gazed into her past as one about to die, looks back upon the sunlit fields of life, where he too ran and sported with the rest, lifting his head above the huge dark stream, into whose depths he must forever plunge. All she had been and done she lived again. The whole year in a swift and eddying race of memories swept through her and fled away into the irrecoverable past. Then silently she rose and, service done, bowed down to the great goddess simply carved by Satyavan upon a forest stone. What prayer she breathed through her soul and Durga knew. Perhaps she felt in the dim forest huge, the infinite mother watching over her child. Perhaps she, shrouded voice, spoke some still word. At last she came to the pale mother queen. She spoke, but with guarded lips and tranquil face, lest some stray word or some betraying look should let pass into the mother's unknowing breast, slaying all happiness and need to live, a dire foreknowledge of the grief to come. Only the needed utterance passage found. All else she pressed back into her anguished heart, and forced upon her speech an outward peace.
Thank you. Let's pause there. So we see that the canto begins on the morning of the day Satyavan dies. So she wakes and he is still sleeping, and she looks back over the past year of her life. It was 1 year earlier exactly that she met and married Satyavan, and received the word from Narad, the heavenly sage, that Satyavan would die in 1 year. So she's looking back upon this year, and he uses a beautiful image here that as she looks back upon this year, it's like someone who is about to die looks back upon his life, reviews the memories of his existence, where he looks back upon the sunlit fields of life, where he too ran and sported with the rest, lifting his head above the huge dark stream into whose depths he must forever plunge. So he feels this approaching death as this dark stream in which he must plunge. Yes. So Sri Aurobindo is comparing Savitri's review of her life during the past year to one who is about to die, reviews his life just before he passes. So it says, all she had been and done, she lived again the whole year in a swift and eddying race. Eddying is like a eddy, a whirlpool in a stream or pond of memories swept through her and fled away into the irrecoverable past. And then she rises and bows down to an image of Durga that Satyavan had carved into a stone. And then it says that perhaps she felt in the dim forest huge the infinite mother watching over her child. And perhaps the shrouded voice spoke some still word, covered, hidden. And then Savitri goes to Satyavan's mother, the pale mother queen. And she spoke to her, but with guarded lips and tranquil face. Savitri knows that this is the last day of Satyavan's life, but she has not told his parents over the course of this year and has kept this knowledge and this grief within her own breast, in her own heart. And she's borne that over the past year. She didn't want to disclose that to his mother, who would then also feel that grief would destroy her own happiness. So she only spoke what was necessary, what she wanted to say. Okay? Yeah, well, she's pale. Now she was a queen at one time, but the king, her husband, has lost his kingdom. He's become blind and can no longer see, and from the palace in which they once lived, they now live in a very kind of humble forest hermitage. And so her life is changed, also maybe kind of unhappy, and perhaps also these images, we see different images of death coming through in this passage, but this paleness might also kind of give us a hint of the paleness that comes with death, the end of life. So Savitri wants to say something to the mother, what she will say next. And Tinaka, would you read?
1 year that I have lived with Satyavan, here on the emerald edge of the vast woods, in the iron ring of the enormous peaks, under the blue rifts of the forest sky, I have not gone into the silences of this great woodland that enringed my thoughts with mystery, nor in its green miracles wandered, but this small clearing was my world. Now has a strong desire seized all my heart to go with Satyavan, holding his hand into the life that he has loved, and touch herbs he has trod and know the forest flowers, and hear at ease the birds and the scurrying life that starts and ceases, rich far rustle of boughs, and all the mystic whisperings of the woods. Release me now, and let my heart have rest. She answered, do as thy wise mind desires, O calm child sovereign with the eyes that rule. I hold thee for a strong goddess who has come, pitying our barren days. So dost thou serve even as a slave might, yet art thou beyond all that thou dost, all our minds conceive, like the strong sun that serves earth from above.
Thank you. So Savitri tells the queen that she's lived here now for 1 year with Satyavan, and they live in a clearing in the vast forest where their hermitage is. And she says, for this whole year I've never wandered out into the forest, but just stayed within this clearing of our hermitage, in the iron ring of the enormous peaks under the blue rifts of the forest sky. So above them there's this clearing, and she can see the blue sky above. She says, I have not gone into the silences of this great woodland that enringed my thoughts with mystery, nor in its green miracles wandered, but the small clearing was my world. Now has a strong desire seized all my heart to go with Satyavan, holding his hand into the life that he has loved, and touch herbs he has trod, and know the forest flowers, and hear at ease the birds and the scurrying life that starts and ceases. Rich far rustle of boughs, and all the mystic whispering of the woods. Release me now, and let my heart have rest. We saw earlier that Satyavan has very much communed with the nature around. He feels very much at home, at peace, at one with nature surrounding them. And now Savitri says she would like to enter into that, to experience that with Satyavan. Of course, she knows that at any moment, at any time, his death may come. So she wants to be with him. So she's asking permission from the mother. May I go today with Satyavan into the forest, as he normally does, to do his work, to chop branches from the trees for the fire, for the hermitage, to maybe gather food from the forest. Yeah, she's quite strong. And at the same time, I mean, we have to remember that she has this great realization, this great spiritual realization. She's a very powerful being, but at the same time, very humble, very sweet. And the people around her, the queen, cannot really fathom all that is there in Savitri's consciousness. But she senses that there's something, for she says, I hold thee for a strong goddess who has come, pitying our barren days. So dost thou serve even as a slave might, yet art thou beyond all that thou doest, all our minds conceive. like the strong sun that serves earth from above. Through all this period, Savitri has just, enacted her role as the young wife, serving the parents and serving the others around in the hermitage, not really coming forward and expressing all that she is within. So let's continue, Nitya.
Oh, which line?
Then the doomed husband, about 2/3 of the way down.
Then the doomed husband and the woman who knew went with linked hands into that solemn world where beauty and grandeur, an unspoken dream, where nature's mystic silence could be felt, communing with the secrecy of God. Beside her, Satyavan walked full of joy, because she moved with him through his green haunts. He showed her all the forest's riches, flowers innumerable of every odor and hue, and soft, thick, clinging creepers, red and green, and strange, rich plumaged birds. To every cry that haunted sweetly, distant boughs replied with a shrill singer's name more sweetly called. He spoke of all the things he loved. They were his boyhood's comrades and his playfellows, coevals and companions of his life. Here in this world, whose every mood he knew, their thoughts which to the common mind are blank, he shared to every wild emotion felt an answer. Deeply she listened, but to hear the voice that soon would cease from tender words and treasure its sweet cadences, beloved for lonely memory, when none by her walked and the beloved voice could speak no more. But little dwelt her mind upon their sense of death, not life, but little dwelt her mind upon their sense of death, not life, she thought, or life's lone end.
Thank you. So we get some very beautiful imagery of this forest in which they walk, where nature's mystic silence could be felt, communing with the secrecy of God. And Satyavan walked full of joy because she moved with him through his green haunts. Haunts are a place in which we frequently visit, we go through. So these are his accustomed paths in the forest through which he often moves. He showed her all the forest's riches, flowers, innumerable, of every odor and hue, and soft, thick, clinging creepers, red and green, and strange, rich plumaged birds. And then this beautiful image, to every cry that haunted sweetly, distant boughs replied, with the shrill singer's name more sweetly called. So as the birds call or sing, she hears in the distance, boughs replying to the call, other birds singing the first one's name back again. And he spoke of all the things he loved, his boyhood's comrades and his playfellows. So he's grown up in this environment and he's become very close to nature. These are his comrades and playfellows. Yeah, I don't know. But it must have been some time. I don't think it mentions how long. So, and he could kind of hear their thoughts, understand their thoughts and feelings of the animals running through the forest. And she was listening to Satyavan and treasuring all the words that he was speaking, knowing that they might be the last ones that she would hear, treasuring its sweet cadences, beloved, the rhythmic flow of his voice, for lonely memory when none by her walked, to keep in her memory when he was gone. But little did she dwell upon their sense, what he was saying, the meaning of what he was saying, for she was thinking of death, not life. So we can continue.
Love in her bosom hurt with jagged edges, of anguished moaned at every step with pain, crying now perhaps his voice will cease, forever even by some vague touch, oppressed, sometimes her eyes looked round as if their orbs might see the dim and dreadful God's approach, but Satyavan had paused. He meant to finish his labor here that happy, linked, uncaring. They too might wander free in the green, deep, primeval mystery of the forest heart. A tree that raised its tranquil head to heaven, luxuriating in verdure, summoning the breeze with amorous wideness of its boughs. He chose and with his steel assailed the arm, brown, rough and strong hidden in its emerald dress. Wordless but near she watched, no turn to lose, of the bright face and body which she loved. Her life was now in seconds, not in hours, and every moment she economized like a pale merchant leaned above his store, the miser of his poor remaining gold. But Satyavan wielded a joyous axe. He sang high snatches of a sage chant that pealed off conquered death and demons slain, and sometimes paused to cry to her sweet speech of love and mockery tenderer than love. She, like a pantheress, leaped upon his words and carried them into her carven heart.
Thank you. Let's pause. So as she's walking with him in the forest, now this anguish within her heart, which she's been holding for this full year, becomes very intense because she knows that it's near the end. So love in her bosom hurt with the jagged edges of anguish, moaned at every step with pain, crying, now perhaps his voice will cease forever. And then even sometimes her eyes looked round as if their orbs might see the dim and dreadful gods approach. So she's even beginning to sense perhaps the presence of death. Anyway, she's looking for his approach. But he continues, he's still happy. He doesn't feel this death approach. So he finds a tree and chooses that to cut a branch. He chose and with his steel assailed the arm, brown, rough and strong, hidden in its emerald dress. So he's beginning to cleave a big branch of this tree. And Savitri, wordless but near, she watched. No turn to lose of the bright face and body which she loved. So she's watching him intently, enjoying the last moments of his life. Her life was now in seconds, not in hours, and every moment she economized. Like a pale merchant leaned above his store, the miser of his poor remaining gold. She's like a merchant looking over his last pieces of gold. But Satyavan wielded a joyous axe. He sang high snatches of a sage's chant. These are snatches are like short passages from a chant that pealed, that spoke of conquered death and demons slain. And sometimes he paused to cry to her sweet speech, to Savitri, of love and mockery, tenderer than love. And she, like a pantheress, a female panther, leaped upon his words and carried them into her cavern heart. And then next, okay.
But as he worked, his doom upon him came. The violent and hungry hounds of pain traveled through his body, biting as they passed, silently, and all his suffering breath besieged strove to rend life's strong hard cords and be free. Then helped, as if a beast had left its prey, a moment in a wave of rich relief, reborn to strength and happy ease he stood, rejoicing, and resumed his confident toil, but with less seeing strokes. Now the great woodsman hewed at him, and his labor ceased. Lifting his arm, he flung away the poignant axe, far from him like an instrument of pain. She came to him in silent anguish and clasped, and he cried to her, Savitri, a pang cleaves through my head and breast, as if the axe were piercing it, and not the living branch. Such agony rends me as a tree must feel when it's sundered and must lose its life. Awhile let me lay my head upon thy lap, and guard me with thy hands from evil fate. Perhaps, because thou touchest, death may pass.
Thank you. So the moment of death is approaching. Satyavan is cutting the branch with his axe, and as he does so, his doom upon him came, and there courses through his body the violent and hungry hounds of pain, biting as they passed silently, and all his suffering breath besieged strove to rend life's strong heart cords and be free. So he feels this tremendous pain coursing through him, and even his life is kind of wanting to break free from the pain, his soul perhaps ready to leave the body. But then there's a pause in the pain, then helped, as if a beast had left its prey. A moment in a wave of rich relief, reborn to strength and happy ease, he stood, rejoicing, and resumed his confident toil, but with less seeing strokes. Doesn't have the strength that he was having before. And now the great woodsman hewed at him, and his labor ceased. Lifting his arm, he flung away the poignant axe, far from him like an instrument of pain. And Savitri rushes over to him. She came to him in silent anguish and clasped, and he cried to her, Savitri, a pang cleaves through my head and breast, as if the axe were piercing it and not the living branch. A while let me lay my head upon thy lap, and guard me with thy hands from evil fate. Perhaps because thou touchest, death may pass. So we'll continue.
What? From where we have to start?
Then Savitri.
Then Savitri sat under branches wide, cool green against the sun, not the hurt tree, which his keen axe had cloven, that she shunned, but leaned beneath a fortunate kingly trunk, She guarded him in her bosom and strove to soothe his anguished brow and body with her hands. All grief and fear were dead within her now, and a great calm had fallen. The wish to lessen his suffering, the impulse that opposes pain, were the one mortal feeling left. It passed. Griefless and strong, she waited like the gods, but now his sweet, familiar hue was changed into a tarnished grayness, and his eyes, dimmed over, forsaken of the clear light she loved. Only the dull and physical mind was left, vacant of the bright spirit's luminous gaze. But once, before it faded wholly back, he cried out in a clinging last despair, Savitri, Savitri, O Savitri, lean down my soul and kiss me while I die. And even as her pallid lips pressed his failed, losing last sweetness of response, his cheek pressed down her golden arm. She sought his mouth still with her living mouth, as if she could persuade his soul back with her kiss. Then grew aware that they were no more alone.
Thank you. Let's pause there. Savitri sits with Satyavan on her lap beneath a different tree, not the one he had been cutting, that she shunned, but beneath the fortunate kingly trunk. She guarded him in her bosom and strove to soothe his anguished brow and body with her hands. All grief and fear were dead within her now, and a great calm had fallen. The wish to lessen his suffering, the impulse that opposes pain, were the one mortal feeling left. It passed. This too passed. Griefless and strong, she waited like the gods. So now she's awaiting death. And now his sweet familiar hue, the color of his face, was changed into a tarnished grayness, and his eyes dimmed over, forsaken of the clear light she loved. But once before it faded wholly back, he cried out in a clinging last despair, Savitri, oh, Savitri, Savitri, oh Savitri, lean down my soul and kiss me while I die. So we have this beautiful, sad image of him calling out to her to kiss him while he is dying. And even as her pallid lips pressed his failed, losing last sweetness of response. His cheek pressed down her golden arm. She sought his mouth still with her living mouth, as if she could persuade his soul back with her kiss. Then grew aware they were no more alone. Helen?
Something had come there, conscious, vast and dire. Near her she felt a silent shade, immense, chilling the noon with darkness for its back. An awful hush had fallen upon the place. There was no cry of birds, no voice of beasts. A terror and anguish filled the world, as if annihilation's mystery had taken a sensible form. A cosmic mind looked out on all from formidable eyes, condemning all with its unbearable gaze, and with immortal lids and a vast brow. It saw in its immense destroying thought all things and beings as a pitiful dream, rejecting with calm disdain nature's delight, the wordless meaning of its deep regard, voicing the unreality of things and life that would be forever but never was, and its brief and vain recurrence without cease, as if from a silence without form or name, the shadow of a remote uncaring God, doomed to his naught the illusory universe, cancelling its show of idea and act in time, and in its imitation of eternity. She knew that visible death was standing there, and such a one had passed from her embrace.
In this short passage, we get a strong introduction to death and what he represents and what he is. We see that he comes like a being, conscious, vast and dire. He comes chilling the noon with darkness for its back. An awful hush had fallen upon the place. A terror and an anguish filled the world, as if annihilation's mystery had taken a sensible form. So it's as if he's representing that annihilation's mystery. A cosmic mind looked out on all from formidable eyes. So he's like a cosmic being, contemning all with its unbearable gaze. Contemning is like treating with disdain or contempt. And with immortal lids and a vast brow, it saw in its immense destroying thought all things and beings as a pitiful dream. Rejecting with calm disdain nature's delight. And the wordless meaning of its deep regard, voicing the unreality of things and life that would be forever but never was, and its brief and vain recurrence without cease. So he's giving expression, voice to this sense of unreality of all things, which is interestingly also was experienced in a perhaps different way by Savitri in her experience of nirvana. There too she felt all things, all beings, all activities as unreal, emotions just kind of arising and failing in this background of emptiness and nothingness. He's kind of representing that also in a way. As if from a silence without form or name, the shadow of a remote, uncaring God, doomed to his naught, the illusory universe. So he too is seeing the universe in all its movements as arising momentarily out of this nothingness and passing back into it again. Canceling its show of idea and act in time, and its imitation of eternity. It's like life imitates eternity by constantly recurring in one form after another, each one passing through death into death, and out again out of this nothingness to recur briefly. But that recurrence, it's like an imitation of the eternity out of which it is arising. So, and we'll see in the cantos that follow, Death speaking to Savitri and expressing these kind of perceptions of the world. So the canto closes, again, just marking this episode, significant episode in the story, the death of Satyavan. She knew that visible death was standing there, and Satyavan had passed from her embrace. I just had the thought while we were reading that there was like an earlier canto which also was just kind of marking an episode in the story and was actually describing, in a way, this same setting. It was that setting in which she first met Satyavan on the forest's verge. The destined meeting place. So on 389, so it's the first canto, very short canto, but again, it's just kind of a marker, kind of describing this place where she is going to meet Satyavan. Nothing else, it just kind of describes the setting. In the next cantos also, it's just kind of the storyline, describing what Satyavan is like, and then their first dialogue with one another, and then their marriage, kind of quick marriage, exchanging of garlands there in the forest. So that whole book, in a sense, is kind of, it doesn't have this deeper, really significant, so much symbolic meanings or deep experiences, but are just more the expressing the storyline, this encounter of Savitri and Satyavan. So it reminds me also of this canto of death. It just kind of is marking this episode in the story, describing the scene that's there. Only at the end, we get some sense of that deeper significance of death, what he represents. Okay, we'll stop there for today. We have some music we can play.
pallid lips pressed his pale, losing grasp to sweetness was gone. His cheek pressed down her golden arm. She sought his mouth still with her living mouth, as if she could persuade his soul back with her kiss. Then go where they were no more alone. Something had come there, conscious, vast and dark. She knew that visible death was standing there, and Satyavan had passed from her embrace.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.